Hello, and welcome to Totally Schway Flipside. My name is Mary.
My name is Luke.
And this is a podcast about kind of whatever I want it to be about.
But recently we've been talking about the phenomenal X-Men 97 because it is a show that has become a mindworm and crawled into my brain, and I spend a lot of time sitting there thinking about it and humming the tune. But yeah, Mary, do you want to talk about what what we're actually talking about this time?
So today we're going to talk about the third and fourth. Or actually, the third and fourth episodes, because we're combining episodes today because, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think I would have enough material if I just talked about one of the episodes.
There's also the fact that we'd end up spending months just talking about X-Men 97 if we didn't condense it down a little bit.
Okay, so we are going to talk about episode 3. Let me get my notes so you can hear a little bit of rustle. I'm looking at Luke right now, and he's like, no rustling of the paper. All right, so it is Fire Made Flesh. So, in the name, just to put it out there, I think you can kind of gather what it might be about, considering, flame eyes and fire coming out of Cyclops' eyes, and Phoenix is fire. So,
that's an interesting take on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I thought of it. So, in this episode, we find out who Madeline Pryor is, because Sinister, this is the Cliff Notes, guys. Sinister has made a clone of Jean, and at some point in their life, switched the two of them.
Yeah. But most importantly, they don't say when.
Yeah, they don't know when. Beast doesn't know when.
No, and that's one of the things I liked about this is the ambiguity of it all. So Beast looks at the genetic markers and says, I think scientifically we can say that the gene that just turned up is the real gene, and the gene who has been pregnant is the clone. Mm-hmm. But then the clone gene says, well, hang on a minute, someone could have doctored that. And it's true, Mr. Sinister could have doctored it. And later on in the season, he does say to Jean, I'm the only one who knows for sure. I could tell you if you're the clone or not, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah, because he's a
creep.
Weirdo. Yeah, I really like that part of the episode, but I don't like Moody Scott. I really don't like Moody Scott. It's just like, didn't we have enough of that?
Well, he was always like Boy Scout Scott, and now he's like emo Scott.
Yeah. Oh, it's his phase.
Yeah,
he's becoming an adult.
I mean, to be fair, if one day another version of you turned up and said, "Hey, I'm the real Mary. You've been living with a clone for God knows
You'd
how
be
long."
like, God, yes.
No, I wouldn't. I'd be like, "Oh no, there's 2 of them."
And I laugh, but I'm giving him side eye.
Yeah, I'll pay for that later.
Yeah. You have to remember, I get half of everything.
Well, no, you won't. You'll get, well, I suppose you would if I died, wouldn't you? But you'd have to share it with your clone.
Yeah.
So I suppose either way you'll get half of it.
I was talking about divorce.
Oh, if you get divorced, then you get 25% and the clone gets the other 25%.
What clone?
The clone that turns up.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The thing I was literally talking about seconds ago.
Who? There wouldn't be a clone.
You can all see why I'm going crazy. Having to live with her.
My thing is I would take care of that clone in a nice, humane way.
Yeah, you would. You'd buy a comfy jumper and say, "Oh, let's live in a little apartment together." And
you think I could live with myself? I would literally be like, "Come here, sugar. Come here. You need to have your hair washed."
but she'd know. She's like, "No, you're the one that needs the hair washing."
Oh. Anyway. All right. So you have that part of the episode. I mean, obviously that's the main storyline, is the Madeline, Jean, Nathan, Scott, Mr. Sinister. Thoughts?
On that specific drama, Well, it continues something that came up in the original X-Men animated series, where he, being Mr. Sinister, kind of manufactured the marriage of Scott and Jean because he was desperate to see their offspring. And I don't really understand how giving Nathan this cyber-organic virus would create some sort of super mutant gene that he could then pilfer and use for himself. Yeah, I didn't really get that part because I don't know, like I just don't really understand why he would genetically engineer a cybernetic organic virus to give to a baby that is probably going to kill the baby, which is why they send Nathan off to the future. See, this is all really complicated, and it's why it's so difficult to talk about X-Men to the layman, because there are all these very difficult concepts.
A good.
I'm actually getting a bit flustered talking about this. So I'm like, oh my god, and then he does this, and then he does that, and then he does that, and oh my god, give me the Batman episodes where the motivations were relatively simple. You know, like this person turned me into a monster, I'm going to kill them.
Another thing in this that goes along with that is when Mr. Sinister, well, not Mr. Sinister, but Madeline takes over the mansion a little bit and does all of the fears and stuff like that. We do see some of the fears of the X-Men, like with Morph and with Roberto. Yeah. We see a little bit of their fear come in. And it's obviously their subconscious fears of, you know...
Rejection,
yeah.
Primarily. And
then Beast comes in. He's like, I have no fear. I'm just going to come in here swinging. And he really does come in there swinging.
One way to put it.
But one thing that really, really got me was... I have a question for you, and I might sound really stupid when I say this. Do you think Gambit's fear started when he switched rooms, or do you think that part of Madeline's thing was the Magneto and Rogue on the tablet saying that they had all day tomorrow too? Because I had thought a little bit that maybe that's when it started to invade his mind.
Maybe. But then Morph also saw it, didn't he? Didn't they, excuse me. Morph saw it on the screen and made a reference to it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily a hallucination. But then again,
everyone else saw everyone else's fears too.
That's true. I don't have an answer for you. Yeah. I wish I did, but I don't.
Do I sound stupid when I do that?
No,
but I just, because it was like all day the next day.
Yeah,
when they were already out on a mission, I believe he said.
I might be misremembering the episode, but I think Sinister hadn't taken over or influenced Madeline by that point.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think Sinister had. So I'm gonna say no, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It is interesting though that Gambit's fear is Rogue touching someone else.
Yeah.
And like the very, very not so subtle imagery of the two bodies just kind of morphing together. Mm-hmm. You know, it's very clear what he's worried about.
When two become one.
Yeah, let's keep it PG.
Mm-hmm. And PC, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that goes on to another one of my notes that I have written down, Rogue and Magnus. Mm-hmm. So in that's not actually the two of them. That is part of his, like, fear, isn't it?
That's right, but you saw at the end of the last episode, Gambit witnessed
Rogue
that coming out of Magneto's room.
Yeah, that part is real.
She had her gloves off and then she put them on when she came out. And you could see his heartbreak because he dropped his Queen of Hearts card. And...
But the imagery that he saw was not like actually seeing them.
No, that was his
cuddling.
fear manifest. But you know, he takes it all in. I was going to say good humour. That's not really what I mean. He takes it all very well. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't lash out at Magneto or Rogue. He kind of just acts like there's nothing wrong, even though he's very clearly heartbroken. But he doesn't want them to know that he knows.
So you had a note on this one.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh yes, during one of the scenes, Jean witnesses the Sentinel, the three-headed Sentinel, doesn't she? Is that in this episode? Where Jean's doing like a mind scan and then she sees the three-headed sentinel and you hear the music. Was that in this episode?
I think so.
I think it was as well. And that kind of foreshadows the massacre, the mutant massacre at Genosha. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was very nice coming back and watching these episodes after finishing the whole season.
Yeah. But Jean does her badass thing.
Yes.
And rather than completely destroying Madeline, she kind of brings her to her version of reality, I guess.
She makes her see sense, doesn't she?
Yeah. But you see what I mean by her version of reality.
Well, the thing is, Mr. Sinister is able to manipulate people and make them act as the best, I should say the worst versions of themselves. He had done something very similar with Morph. And he does the same thing to Madeline, as she calls herself, making her the Goblin Queen. Now, that Goblin Queen reference is a reference. In fact, this whole episode is a reference to this lengthy comic book crossover called Inferno, where Madeline Pryor summoned Hell to New York. And at the end of it, the X-Men kind of sealed off Hell, but they all seemed to be dead, when really they'd just been transported to the Australian outback and were just hanging out there for a while.
Oh.
So this whole episode is like a massive distillation of that whole crossover without the Australian outback. And that's kind of ties into something that I've noticed with this show, is that the pacing is a bit all over the place.
Yeah.
Like you'll have... I think the first episode was very well paced. Perhaps they kind of rushed the Sentinel battle a little bit, that the X-Men took them down a little bit too easily. Although maybe that was just to try and emphasise the point that they were now garbage. Mm-hmm. The second episode, I don't feel like they gave enough time to Magneto's trial, but that doesn't mean they did badly. Similarly, this Inferno episode, as I refer to it, it went at a lightning pace, and not a single second was wasted. It was kind of impressive. I think it's actually pretty impressive.
So I wrote down, because usually when I write my notes, it's literally just like a name, just a little sentence or something. But this one is, I put, this episode is an important fever dream for the X-Men, because you get to see their fears. You get to see the Jean and Madeline thing, Moody Scott, obviously. And then I think what's important as well is there's that little 5-second clip where Jean's like, "You feel that for me?" when she's talking to Logan. And that, I think they did that perfectly, where it wasn't dragged out too much, and it was just that, because maybe they'll come back to that later on. But it was kind of perfect. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about that episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question about identity, because both Jeans share their memories and experiences. Although Madeline is the one that gave birth to Nathan, Jean still remembers it. It's almost as if she went through it herself. These are just very interesting questions about identity that we will never, ever have to deal with in the real world. But I think you can kind of take some of the same logic and apply it to some real world situations, around people deciding their own identity, not being who
their parents raised them to be, or who society wants them to be.
Yes, yeah. Or, as you said, who society expects them to be. Again, it's very X-Men. A very X-Men thing right there.
Yeah, and I enjoy things where it's not as obvious. I think, like you said, it's just X-Men. Society is cruel.
Can be.
At the best of times. And for people that are like outcast and not really understood, it's hard. And sometimes we kind of lash out and everything. And I'm going to say this again. I think I've said it in one of the other podcasts. I wish we had the X-Men so I could feel like I belong somewhere or something. Yeah. But I think a lot of us feel that way, where we don't belong, or we feel like whatever. But yeah.
I've got this kind of half-formed thought at the moment. I'm going to try and express it, but I'm probably not going to be able to express it very well. So I see a lot of parallels between the X-Men and like drag culture, because they very much choose their own identities. Yeah, okay, I don't know. I don't really know much about drag culture, but I've kind of absorbed some of it through you watching things like RuPaul's Drag Race, and there are some YouTubers that you watch. But they kind of choose their own names, and they wear flamboyant, over-the-top costumes that you think no one would ever wear in real life. And they've all kind of got their own
wonderful identity.
Yeah, their own identity, but their own little niche. You know, these are things that they specialize in. And I guess I think that idea was planted in my head by Grant Morrison's X-Men comics, where he talked about there was a mutant fashion designer who was designing clothes for people that all looked like superhero outfits, and that was described as, no, that's just mutant fashion. It's not a superhero outfit, that's just mutant fashion. That's what mutants wear in their day-to-day, so that other mutants can recognize each other. And that kind of makes me think back to the X-Men animated series, where you'd always have these cameos of these well-known characters, or at least characters that are well-known by the fans, and you'd see them in the background wearing their costume. Now, they'd be usually in like a normal everyday setting, like in a bar or something, and they'd look absolutely ridiculous. And you think, why would that person wear that? And you think, well, actually, because that's part of their identity, and it's so that the other mutants know that they are also a mutant.
Yeah.
And it's also so that the fans would recognise them.
Oh, I love drag culture. Although I don't know everything about it, I am a huge fan of a lot of drag performers. One, I believe I would technically say Divine was a drag performer. Absolutely loved them. Trixie Mattel. I love the fact that you have Trixie and then you have not Trixie. And you can definitely see the difference between the two. But also, a lot of times when you see drag performers, in their drag, you still have some of their identity in that.
Yeah.
But it's more of like you said, like a superhero identity, or like I don't know. It's such a fascinating, awesome subject.
Yeah. And just one final thought on that as well is that the name X-Men itself, I've come to start thinking of it as meaning X as in former. So like the former men, they used to be like humans. Now they are not.
Yeah. So they are no longer humans like us. Well, I'm not really human though, am I?
No, you're a dancer.
Exactly. Name that song in the comments.
Yeah, but I mean, I like this episode a lot. To come back off of that slightly tangential path, I did like this episode. It really rushed through very quickly. It had a little bit of everything that makes the X-Men, so one of the things I found really, really frustrating actually about this episode is Cyclops' approach to what happens with Nathan. So Nathan is infected with this virus that cannot be cured in current time period.
Yeah.
So they decide to send him to the future with Bishop, now that Beast has repaired Bishop's time band. And Cyclops' response is, "My father abandoned me. I'm not going to abandon my son." Then he immediately turns around and walks out of the room. It's just like, dude,
what did you just do?
All right, you don't approve of your son being sent to the future without you. Okay, I get it, but you have literally just abandoned him, Cyclops. I was going to swear then. You dimwit.
You deadbeat.
Well, yeah. Cyclops is a deadbeat dad, and all because he's worried about how it makes him feel. Like, oh, I feel like a loser because I've got to give up my son. I couldn't save my son. So meh, meh, meh.
And you see that
God's sake, Cyclops.
You see that it's Jean that hands him over.
That was Madeline.
Or Madeline, yeah.
Yeah, Madeline's the mother, so Madeline handed him over.
Sugar. See, this is the thing. Like, I get a little bit confused about who's who.
Because they look the same, apart from when they wear different clothes. She should have had the sense to dye her hair a different colour.
Or wear a ribbon.
She's got a red ribbon tied around her little finger, so everyone knows that's Madeline.
I mean, or in her hair.
Yeah, could have
done
that.
Or wear some different earrings. That would have been nice.
Maybe.
Let's move on to Motendo. I believe. And that is the first part of episode 4.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about both parts of episode 4.
But the first part is Motendo. And this is probably if I had to put the episodes in order from, like, least exciting to most exciting, this would be nearer to the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, this is my least favourite episode of the whole series, but that doesn't mean that it's bad.
Oh, no, it's not bad. It's just, it honestly doesn't have a lot of, to me anyway, the storyline doesn't really progress that much.
It's intended, I think, to be like a light-hearted, well, for the most part, a light-hearted breather after that kind of quite emotionally turbulent episode about Jean and Madeline, and with what's about to come up in the 5th episode. Oh my God,
no.
So I think they probably felt they needed a breather. And you know what? This was a nice opportunity for them to revisit some of the older episodes.
It was so cute. It really was so cute.
Yeah, so, you know, I really don't like Mojo. I think Mojo sucks.
Ugh.
I really don't like that character at all. And I was not thrilled to see him turn up again. Okay, he's moved on to video games, but not video games as we might know them now, but more how video games were in the late 90s. So kind of side-scrolling...
like Super Nintendo.
Yeah, side-scrolling brawlers on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, like Sega.
Yes, yeah. And so the game that Jubilee and Roberto get sucked into, I wish they had released this game. I wish that it was playable, even if it was short.
It would have been really... Disney!
Yeah, come on, Disney.
Come on. You guys could do it.
But it was cool to see some previous references, or I should say some references to previous episodes. Like they're at the Genosian Dam, where all the mutants were enslaved to help build the dam. You briefly see the streets from Night of the Sentinels and Savage Land, where they battle Sauron. And I really, really wish that there had been some sort of synergy across Disney to get a game out. Even at the very least, to release the old X-Men arcade game. Re-release it on modern platforms. You know, the Welcome to Die, based on Pride of the X-Men, that failed X-Men cartoon pilot, with the tan suit Wolverine and Colossus and Dazzler and Nightcrawler, Cyclops. Who else was in there? Storm, obviously, yeah. I really loved that game, playing it on the PS3 and 360 when it was last re-released, and I wish they'd just release it again, because I want to play it more. But that was my little rant over. I thought the other cool thing there is that it gave the opportunity for the original Jubilee voice actress, I believe her name's Alison Court. I could be wrong, but I believe that's her name. She comes back to play the older Jubilee
that was awesome.
Been growing up in the simulation. And it was a nice opportunity to show Jubilee that her powers aren't rubbish, that she could have good powers, that she has... It gives her the chance to develop, because she often makes reference to like how lame her powers are in comparison to the other X-Men. There's a funny bit later on where she tries to escape from, I think it's the Sentinels, the Neo Sentinels. And she's like, oh, God damn it, everyone else can fly and all I can do is shoot sparkly things from my fingers. But, you know, this older, more experienced Jubilee shows her that there's actually more to her powers than she thinks. And I thought that was nice.
Yeah.
But overall, I didn't really care very much for this section.
No.
And I know, Mary, you didn't either. You didn't.
No.
Do you know what? They really missed an opportunity to include references to the old Konami arcade game. Why didn't Magneto say, "Welcome to Die"? I wish he had said that. That would have been perfect.
Yeah. Oh,
But
I mean,
anyway.
I guess it does do a little bit of the storyline, because you get that Roberto Jubilee like love story. Although, as much as I love a love story, I don't like Mojo, and let's just move on to the...
Well, there was one thing I want to say.
I'm joking.
I did enjoy the opening section where Jubilee comes down for breakfast on her birthday, and they ask her, the X-Men ask her how she wants to spend her day. She's like, oh, we could go to the mall. And then it cuts to Magneto. And he starts to scowl, and he's about to speak, and then it cuts to Jubilee storming upstairs, like going, "Yeah, of course Magneto doesn't want us to spend time at the mall." As I said in the last episode, Magneto's my favourite X-Man at the moment, so I can only imagine what he said about having to spend the day at the mall in the arcades.
I don't know if I told you this, but my mom's favourite.
Yeah, I know who your mother's favourite is.
Rogue.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to say that every time.
Every time Rogue comes up.
Yeah, let's move on to Life Death Part 1.
Yeah, so this is the second half of the fourth episode, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really half, it's more like the last third.
You get some Forge and Aurora storyline, and this is where you can see the true heartbreak that Storm is going through.
Yes, yeah, particularly when she learns that Forge is indirectly responsible for her losing her powers. I like Forge, actually. I think he's a very good character, and he's got a wonderful power that, God, I wish I had. I wish I could build something.
Me too.
Just anything
well, I
at
can
this
build
point.
things, but
Yeah, I put some shelves up a couple of weeks ago and felt quite proud about that. But then there's Forge going, right, any device I can think of, I will be able to build it.
I don't know. The Storm episodes, although Storm is one of my favorite X-Men, the Storm episodes are not some of my favorites.
No.
Only because I just wish they wouldn't have done the whole part 1, part whatever. I really think that if they would have actually done a full episode of it all together, it would have been better, in my opinion. But because I feel that if they would have done it in just more than just half parts or third parts, as you've said, you would have been able to have a little bit more of that storyline, and you would have been able to actually do it. And I don't know, Storm. I think the writing in this is great. I'm not dogging that or anything. I just wish it would have been all in one episode.
Yeah. I mean, there is a very important break.
Well, obviously that break, but I still feel like they could have done this after episode 5, because episode 5 is the main episode that it is the climax of Genosha. If you will.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this next time.
But I feel that this could have been, you could have had the Genosha episode, and then you could have had the Storm episode, because it still would have gathered.
Yeah. I don't know, because it's kind of this part of the episode is very bleak, and I think if it happened after the massacre at Genosha, you would just be like, well, it's not as bad as what happened at Genosha. This is more like a bleak appetizer for the main course of despair and disaster in episode 5.
Yeah, I feel that they could have had more substance to Storm.
Yeah, I mean, I would have preferred it if the life-death part was longer, and they could still spread it over the 2 episodes, episodes 4 and 6, and just cut out the Jubilee bit, because
I just really wanted it to be one episode. Like, that's my opinion. The Jubilee episode could have been like episode 2.
The life death story in the comics, I swear that was like 4 parts long. I could be misremembering, because it's been decades since I've read that era of X-Men. But I remember it being a bit more substantial, and you could have done more character development for Forge and see his relationship with Storm blossom, rather than just coming straight to it and it's in bloom and then it
but you
immediately
see what I
gets
mean by
chopped down.
It needs more substance.
Yes, yeah, that's basically what you're saying. But I feel like it could have done with being an episode and a half. Still have the half episode. So you could have Professor X.
Yeah, you could have done this, and then the Jubilee episode.
I mean, I just wouldn't have done the Jubilee episode. I would have made this longer.
I still think that it was a great episode. I mean, a good episode, but it's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I like the dark stuff.
Well, this does have the dark stuff. Like
I'm talking about the Jubilee episode.
Yeah, the life death stuff. Like you genuinely feel Storm's despair.
You do. There is. really love the creators of the show, because there is a scene when she is on the floor and she's looking almost into the camera, or to where the camera would be, and somehow you see the pain, and then the voice actress speaks and you hear it. That voice actress absolutely deserves an Emmy for that, because with animated series, it's very hard nowadays to make me feel something like that when I hear it. And she did it. Like, kudos to her, because that's a gift. That is an art.
Yeah.
And it was, you felt it, you saw it, you felt like you were going through it with her, and that was very important. And I'm so glad that this episode exists.
Yeah.
But like I said, I just wish it had a bit more substance, because somebody that doesn't watch X-Men or hasn't read X-Men might be like, oh, so Forge and Storm, they're like a thing now? They're like, oh, okay, we missed a lot. But yeah, it's still an important part of the series, but
yeah,
I just wish there was more.
Yeah, and I feel bad for Forge as well, because okay, he was indirectly responsible for that technology existing, but he was coming from a place of pain when he developed that. He was working with people who he thought were his friends to try and make the world a better place. He was imagining using this tech on, mutants like Apocalypse and his Horsemen, not the
and
X-Men.
Mr. Sinister.
Well, Mr. Sinister technically isn't a mutant. He is just someone that steals mutants' DNA and kind of augments himself with it.
A splicer.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think they call him a mutate, technically.
Yeah.
And I liked the little hints at Forge's backstory. So, like, you see photos in the background with him being a part of X Factor, with people like Strong Guy and Havoc and Polaris. And then you see a photo with what looks like him having his arms around. So there's that mutant. He's not a mutant. He's that scientist that developed the cure for mutation machine in X-Men the Animated Series, that had been killed and replaced by Mystique pretending to be him, and then she was converting people into Apocalypse's slaves. You see him in the background in a photo, and also what looks like Bastion with Forge. So,
sorry to cut you off there.
Please do.
Though he says the war. Now, it could be a few different wars, or it could be a fictional war. But I was asking you if you thought it was Desert Storm.
I think it was.
Thinking about it, you don't know how old Forge is, do you?
He's not that old, considering he's still alive and fairly spry.
Yeah.
When Bishop is a young man.
Yeah.
So like 50 years in the future.
Yeah. So
he's probably like 30 odd around that time.
So I would say it was Desert Storm.
Yeah.
If it was a real war.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been Vietnam, because he would have been too young.
Yeah, I was just thinking that in my head, because Vietnam was 60s, and that would have been like 30 years prior at that point. So yeah, I think it's Storm, but Desert Storm, excuse me.
Yeah, well, there's the irony.
Yeah.
Desert Storm broke him, and Storm rebuilt him.
And that's where we're going to end this off, and let's move to the comments.
Badum-tsh. Okay, first comment. We have Big Michael P.
Big Mikey P.
Michael Andre Parlon says, looks at thumbnail, I don't care if it shows off skin and doesn't have his helmet much. Magneto's new look in the show is glorious.
Agreed.
See, I prefer his red costume, but, I understand that different people like different things, so it's fine.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So continuing the comment, believe me, Mary, lots of X-Men and Spider-Man the Animated Series episodes should have been done better. Granted, I've been spoiled by far better works like the DC Animated Universe in a manner similar to how Wolfenstein 3D is no Doom and how Sailor Moon is no Revolutionary Girl, Utena. Trust me, places like Reddit have lots of folk admitting to those regards. It's smote instead of smited. I thought it was. Why need a real-life Magneto? I'd rather have a Dr. Manhattan and an Ozymandias. Well, that's a Watchmen reference there.
What Superman.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, the bad faith, folks. I swear I'm annoyed by the ones that treat Galactic Empire starfighters as ultimately badly made craft. As a TIE fighter gamer, I'll say otherwise, and deem the appearances of Captain America and Uatu the Watcher in X-Men 97 as unnecessary MCU synergy. Seriously, both are actual characters in the animated series, though the latter was just a Dark Phoenix Saga cameo among many other cameo moments in that show and Spider-Man the Animated Series.
Can I say something really quick?
No.
You know, the Phoenix stuff,
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I didn't love it.
No, I don't like it either. Continuing. Not that into Grey's Anatomy. I'm more into MASH and Scrubs.
I didn't get into Scrubs. I wasn't forced to watch MASH, but I did watch it when I was a kid with my grandparents.
I thought you were going to say he was banned. Ha! Just noticed that the Executioner, that is name, has a misaimed fandom bit in TV tropes YMMV page for X-Men 97. Just how many people did Sabretooth affect negatively in Earth 92131 besides Wolverine, I have to admit? Everyone he met. Especially Graydon Creed. Look at what a monster he turned out to be. Anyway, 1922. Pity, I actually want to pay equal, if not greater, evil unto evil Mary. What better way to defeat the homeland oppressors than the foreign interlopers, than to oppress the former threat back and interlope on the later foe 100-fold in crude terms? I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm sorry.
It's because you're not in tune with Big Mikey P and myself.
It's true. Very much not. On a side note, an interesting teed off that lots of libraries are getting less support, if not receiving more content undermining. Mouse, Persepolis and genderqueer truly shouldn't be bannable. The Executioner really should be given the Huntress doing to Jazzman in Batman The Adventures Continued treatment. Yes, those comics are Elseworlds separate from the proper DCAU continuity. Alan Burnett and Paul Dini say they're not, so...
A little bit to say about the bannable books and everything. I was a big person of like buying books when I was younger at like, I think it was Borders and Barnes and Noble. I think those are the two that we had in Heritage Park Mall. If you know what Heritage Park Mall is, then you'll know exactly what my hometown is. There were so many things that I would hear on television, like so many books that I would hear on television, and I would go and look for them and I couldn't find them. So I'm not sure if they were banned completely or if they had sold very little, but I'm pretty sure it was because Oklahoma had a very big book ban, including Harry Potter.
Yes, and look how effective it was banning all those books. Yes, no queer people in Oklahoma, right?
Well, I'm here, but I don't live in Oklahoma anymore, do I?
Yeah, I know. In case anyone couldn't tell, I was being facetious.
Yeah.
Anyway, she sure is the real Jean Grey because she fainted after freaking out. Yeah,
oh my god, yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Such are the fandom and the memes. Pass on anything He-Man plus Ren and Stimpy. Never grew up on the former, while the latter is irreversibly cursed. 35 minutes, 45 seconds. My turn. 39 minutes and 43 seconds. I was wrong. That's Bishop's timeline. Cable is at 3,999. Apologies for the timestamp stuff. And yet, you've done it again.
Oh, I don't mind that. Timestamp all you want.
42 minutes and 25 seconds, getting warmer, yet it doesn't end as licorice. I assume I mispronounced something obscure. I bet it's not obscure. I bet it's got millions of fans, more fans than Batman does, and I've just got no idea what it is because I'm clueless. I have a concluding confession to make. I actually started an Earth 92131 binge in the last months of 2023, almost alongside the DCAU binge. Unfortunately, while the latter is quite an entertaining breeze for me, the former is increasingly becoming a drag that gets held off lots, to the point that I'm watching other stuff like Ojamanjo Doremi, speaking of stuff I don't know what it is, somewhat as a means to conquer the boredom, for the lack of a better term. In short, it will take a long while before I might fully catch up with Graduation Day and Farewell Spider-Man. Also, I'm currently finished on the Out of the Past 2-part premiere of Season 2. Barring that, we'll wait for Episode 3 and more.
Thank you, Big Mikey P. It's always a pleasure reading your comments.
Okay, next we have play content. Hello, Connor. How are you doing?
Hello.
I like the idea of a future episode in which an X-Man, maybe Nightcrawler, the reason I've chosen him is because the dart I just threw landed on his name, is somehow, I'll let the writers figure out how, kidnapped by a mutant hater who, it turns out, was a fan of some fictional in-universe comic series as a child, in which the heroes, who he loves, are comparable to the X-Men, and the villains, who he roots against, are comparable to the Friends of Humanity, but he doesn't see the real-world parallel until it's pointed out to him. He later finds out that the writer of said comic was a mutant and gradually changes his views. The good thing about this is, if the plot actually is used in a future episode, we'll know the showrunners are fans of Totally Schway Flipside. The bad thing about this is, if the plot actually is used in a future episode, we might not be credited or paid because I haven't copyrighted the idea. Wait, copyright! Connor Houghton, 2024. Yes. Special thanks to Totally Schway Flipside. Phew! That's the problem solved. The more I think about it, the more I think some writer must have already come up with a similar idea.
I like that idea. It seems like something that I would watch.
Yeah.
And listen to.
Yeah, good suggestion, though.
Yeah, go Connor. Go Connor, go.
Next, new commenter, I think. It's not a name that I recognise, and I apologise if you have commented before and I've just forgotten. I am, after all, an old man. Matthew K122 says, love X-Men 97.
Me too.
Us too. That's why we've been talking about it so much.
Weird.
Next we have the Phantasm, who says, hey guys, sorry I couldn't come and done the previous video. I was a bit busy. No worries, you don't need to.
Right.
You don't owe us anything. Too. So back to the topic at hand, which is the episode Fire Made Flesh, and holy moly, check out Madeline Pryor. I always found her comic book suit outrageous, but in this show, along with Jennifer Hale's fabulous voice, it was really awe-inspiring. I also find it funny that people forget that this is actually not Jennifer Hale's first time playing Jean Grey, as she also did so in Wolverine and the X-Men. I think she was Jean Grey in a couple of X-Men games as well, but I might be mistaken. Speaking of voice actors, I have to say that Christopher Britton, who voices Sinister in the episode and also did it in the original series, actually sounds much better. And sinister, no pun intended, 30 years later. Regarding the episode adapting Inferno, to be fair, it is an exhaustingly long story in the comics, and condensing it I think was a smart idea, especially how they handled Madeline, which was way better for everyone to think that she was the actual Jean Grey, including herself, rather than Scott just randomly meeting someone who looks and sounds exactly like Jean, and the real Jean being revealed to be inside a stasis pod underneath the ocean. X-Men stuff can be really, really convoluted sometimes. It really can. But that was a good summation, thank you. Summation, excuse me.
I find Jean Grey insufferable. I said it. I did. I mean it too.
I think every fourth word in her dialogue is Scott!
Scott!
But anyway, that being said, I think this probably should have been 2 episodes instead of 1, just to let some things breathe a bit better. And I kind of agree, but at the same time, I think it was quite impressive that they managed to distill all of Inferno down into about 25 minutes. It was very good.
It's good that they've done just a 10 episode run, but I'm still going to say it. I'm going to say it every episode. The Storm episode could have been half an episode.
Rather than 2 halves of 2 episodes.
You know what? It could have been like 15 minutes of just like Aurora just... being Aurora.
It could have just been 1 episode. That would have been nice. I think that would have been okay. But anyway, it's a minor nitpick. It's fine.
Yeah.
Next comment, Belmont GR. Hey, thanks for returning.
Hello.
The relationship between Magneto and Rogue is one of the most gross things I've ever seen in mainstream cartoons. So basically, her mother offered her to a very older man, and they had a relationship where the older man seduced a teenage woman. Imagine something like this in real life.
I mean, that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah. Unfortunately things like that do happen. And I mean, I think it's fair to assume that Rogue is younger, certainly like late teens at the most. But we don't know for certain, and I do agree it is kind of gross, and it is one of Magneto's many failings. Magneto may be right a lot of the times, but sometimes he is very wrong.
Sometimes, but not very often. I think, I don't know, in this situation, it is a little bit different than just handing your child or your young adult over to somebody, because you're dealing with something a little bit different, and this is supposed to be a professor, and he's supposed to have some like trust and all of that.
I don't know if I'd call him a professor, but he's like a mutant leader.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
It's a little bit different, but yeah, I could totally see how creeper that would be.
Yeah.
It is kind of so.
I agree. Next comment, we have David BTAS, who says, hello David, by the way, who says, your perspective on X-Men 97 is refreshing. Whereas most YouTubers and their uncles talk about and gush solely about the X-Men characters, you have the courage to talk about the message behind X-Men 97 and how it relates to today's society and current events. Then you talk about the characters to make the episode more digestible. Clever. Thank you, and keep up the message and the great work. Thank you very much, David.
No,
It's very
thank
kind of
you. Thank you for commenting.
Next comment, David Carney. Hello, David. Nice of you to come back. Oh, pleased to see you. He says, I should say, it's nice to hear something positive about X-Men 97. The hate for this show is ridiculous. It's cult mentality. Also, I love Doom Patrol as well.
Oh, I do too.
I agree with both of you, and if there were more people like both of you, this world would be a better place.
Oh, shucks.
That's a very nice thing of you to say.
Yeah, I love Doom Patrol, by the way. Like the TV show. I've not read. I read a little bit of the comics actually, because I found some on the internet. Even though Luke probably has them somewhere.
On my DC Infinite subscription, yeah.
But yeah, it seems really, really cool, the comics. But the show was just Brendan Fraser. God.
Yes, I remember saying to someone when the show had ended, I said, that final episode was massively poignant, and it's made all the more of a gut punch considering that last season was about the Earth being invaded by zombie butts.
Yeah. But we love zombie butts.
But it wasn't the zombie butts that made it poignant. It was just the end to every one of those characters.
Yeah.
The last couple of moments of Doom Patrol, oh my God. I was like, oh no.
Heartbreaking, but one of the best endings to a television show, because you got an actual ending rather than it being like, oh, we might come back one day. Mm-hmm. And
well, some of them might, but
but
spoilers.
I felt like you truly got an ending to each of their story.
Yeah. Sounds like we're going to talk about Doom Patrol one day.
Oh, we will, definitely.
Next comment, Frozen Jack 2007. I like X-Men. Gambit is the best character. Gulp. Ooh. Teasers for next episode, I think. And finally, we have Lowell Lucas Jr. How you doing, Lowell Lucas Jr.?
Hello. I subscribed to you.
On YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Because I like the stuff that you had, and I noticed that you have some Elvira stuff. And I like Elvira.
So, Lowell Lucas Jr. says, as a person of colour, it was very hard growing up with an air of caution. Yeah, I can only imagine. Mm-hmm. I did have to learn to avoid police scrutiny by being passive and showing no aggression. I'm glad shows like X-Men Static and even Gargoyles show how hard it is to be persecuted, but still show care and concern for your fellow man. Thank you for sharing, you two. I greatly appreciate it. I was happy to see the Executioner make his debut, being a long-time fan since the 94 Fleer X-Men cards. Now there's a callback. But knowing his viewpoints are troubling to say the least, there have been people from certain hate groups who said Executioner represents their ideals, and that's crazy. I agree. Lunatics, a lot of them. However, I'm glad he and the other humans got humbled by Magnus with his beautiful delivery and clarity of this ignorant matter. I tell you what, the amount of times I say to myself, worm, ingrate, sycophant.
Yes, he does. Like, he doesn't even just say it to himself. He says it out loud.
Yeah.
But the way that Magnus did that was just... It was very theatric, but it also showed them that he can. Like, it's there's a song that I've been listening to recently by Pink. And what was the thing is, I wish you would. Like, really not tonight. And it kind of reminds me of that scene, because it's like, I'm going to take you up here just so I can show you that I can hurt you, but I'm choosing not to.
Well, he's also giving them a sense of perspective, like, look how massive the world is.
Yeah.
You're trying to make it very small. This is how big it really is. Get some perspective,
Yeah.
you lunatics.
It's not just your little hodunk town.
Yeah.
It's the entire world. And I could go on for hours about that. But yeah, I love it.
And just to close off what Lowell Lucas Jr. was saying, it says, I just wanted to share that I'm loving catching your podcasts and enjoying your content. If I had to make any suggestions, I would just ask if you could share more of your love of X-Men from back in the 90s till now. Like, did you ever collect any of the trading cards or figures, or even the comics or video games? Just something to share back with your love of X-Men in addition to you and your husband's love of Batman. Also, on a side note, I want to clarify the whole Kevin Smith He-Man thing was my complaint of the first 2 seasons. The third season's fixed thing. Excuse me. The third season fixed things. That was very difficult for me to say, but it felt a little too late and has a long time since the 80s and '02 reboot. I was kind of disappointed at how things were handled in the beginning, despite the beautiful animation.
So I believe my brother and I had some X-Men Pogs, if I'm not mistaken, and we also had 1 or 2 of the video games. I know my brother had more of the video games than I did. Shout out if my brother ever listens. Hey Wayne, what are you doing? And I always wanted some of the figures, but you know, I was a kid and I would rather spend my money on the Batman Forever plates. But no, I believe it was the Pogs and a couple of video games that I had. But I will see if I can find those figures that I wanted. Because I just... The Rogue one, even though the face was kind of not perfect, I still wanted that one. Yeah. I hope I'm making sense.
You are making perfect sense.
Yeah.
And in terms of me, the only comic book series that I really collected were the Batman titles and the X-Men titles. I did get Spider-Man for a while and some Avengers and Superman for a little bit. But the ones that I always collected without fail were Batman, Detective Comics, X-Men and Uncanny X-Men. I had some of the action figures. I remember I had the Juggernaut figure. Was that a Kenner figure? I don't think it was. Was it Mattel? I think it might have been Mattel.
Probably Mattel if it's Marvel.
And he had this like clip-on like red, almost like a triangle that he attached to his chest.
Yes. That was one of the ones that I wanted when I was a kid, because I wanted the Juggernaut, I wanted Rogue, Gambit, and Nightcrawler.
So I had Juggernaut, Professor X, Gambit, Wolverine, and the Wolverine had like a clip-on and clip-off mask.
Yes, I wanted the Wolverine as well. There's quite a few.
And I wanted Sauron. One of my earliest... Sauron, excuse me. Sauron's Lord of the Rings. One of my earliest memories is being in a branch of Woolworths in Wales and having the Sauron figure in my hand and saying to my dad, "Can I have this?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because I haven't got any money." I said, "Can you write a cheque?" He was like, "You need to have money to be able to write a cheque." And I said, "Yeah, but they don't know that. just write a cheque and I'll take this." Yeah. And he was just like, "No." I was still about 4 years old. Still showing the same level of understanding of finance. Always spending money that I don't have. And it's fine though. The bank's happy with it. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're good for it."
I need to see if I can actually find some of those.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Easy?
Yeah. Well,
I don't really care if it's in the box or not.
They re-released them in the original packaging as well. There's been a whole run of them. Oh, I had an Iceman as well.
Oh, is that the one that I saw at Target?
Maybe. Well, we saw some in game.
Online.
We saw some in game.
Yeah, but there was like a whole.
Yeah.
I might see if I can find that over here.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I was so tempted to get Mondo's X-Men action figures as well, but I just don't have the space or the money. You know, $200 for a.
Yeah, but I've got to.
But I really want a Magneto.
It's the space that I'm concerned
about. And the
about.
Rogue figure's so good. The guy that worked on it, I've forgotten his name now. We follow each other on Instagram. I've forgotten his name. His screen name's Zeul something, Zeul. Mm-hmm. He does a load of custom figures, but he's been doing sculpting and painting work for Mondo recently. I think he worked on the Man-Bat figure, the BTAS Man-Bat figure as well. But he had a picture of the Rogue figure, how it looks. I guess they've been delivered recently, and it looks so good. I was like, God damn it, why don't I have more space? Why don't I have more money?
Yeah, I've had to have many conversations with Luke about... I would like to actually be able to come into the office and walk into it and sit at my space. At the moment, I can do that.
Just about.
If he gets the X-Men figures, it's like, no thanks, no. You don't even have a chair anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah. But if we had another room, fine. And then I would have as many Barbies as I could imagine. I'm going to say something about that. From the 90s and 80s. Mm-hmm. Okay? We don't need this 2000s and newer.
No. Well, I'm looking into ways of seeing if we could get our loft boarded, because then I can put a load of stuff up in the attic and that'll free up space for me to buy more stuff.
For me to play Barbie dolls.
Anyway, that's the end of the comments. So I guess everyone knows what we're going to talk about next time.
Oh.
Yeah. Episode 5 of X-Men 97. Remember it. And we're just going to talk about that episode. We're not going to do 2 together because I feel like we've got a lot to say about this one. And hopefully you'll return and listen to it, dear listeners.
Love you guys. Have a great day. Remember, if you're having a bad day, I probably am too. Love you. Bye.